Look at my co-wife's children. They are doing better than you. I don't want you to end up like your father.
That child is not your blood. I warned you. You and your mother will die.
Darling, I'm pregnant. My mother's voice, Godfather's voice, and my wife's voice pounded in my head as I buried myself in pains and regrets, wondering how I got my life into shackles. Is your one and only twice sweet African folktales, where stories sound like reality, beautiful and educative. Please don't forget to share, like, and comment your thoughts and observation. Subscribe and hit the notification button for more stories. Sit back and be entertained. My name is Akunna. I was born into a polygamous family, the son of a soldier who served as a mayor in the army of Amanze village in Enugu. My father had 3 wives and 2 concubines, resulting in a sprawling family of 23 children from the wives and 8 from the concubines. As the last wife, my mother, Egodemma, bore the most children, 6 boys and 5 girls. My father, ever the womanizer, was said to have fathered more children than we knew. His frequent postings in the army meant he was rarely home, and each new location brought a new woman into his life. His death left a vacuum, and whispers of his many children floated around, leaving us with an incomplete picture of our family tree. Egodemma, my mother, was a formidable woman. Despite her many children, she managed our household with an iron will. She was known for her resilience and resourcefulness, having once been a street hawker before marrying my father. After his death, she had a series of male visitors, but one man in particular caught my eye. A man who bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Rumors circulated that I was not my father's son, given my mother's past as a hawker. This particular man, who looked so much like me, stirred doubts in my mind and those of my siblings. Though my mother never spoke of him, my conscience nagged me, suggesting a truth I was reluctant to face. The rumors about my parentage and the mystery of the man who resembled me weighed heavily on my mind. These doubts affected my sense of identity, but they also forged my resilience. I learned to navigate the complex web of family expectations and societal pressures, determined to carve out my own path. As the first child of my mother, I had 3 elder brothers from my father's other wives. The competition among us was fierce, driven by my mother's admiration for their children. My mother's frequent comparison to my co-wife's children only fueled my determination to succeed. Yet her harsh words often stung. Look at my co-wife's children. They are doing better than you. I don't want you to end up like your father. Education became my refuge and my hope for a better future. Despite the noise and chaos of our crowded home, I focused on my studies, determined to rise above the circumstances of my birth. My mother's reminders about exams were a constant pressure, but they also spurred me on. With each passing day, my resolve to succeed grew stronger. I knew that education was my ticket to a different life, one where I could provide for my future children and create a stable, loving home. My mother's stories and struggles became my motivation, pushing me to excel in my exams and beyond. As I grew older, my mother's insatiable greed and desire to compete with others led me down a dark path. I began engaging in illegal activities, robbery, kidnapping, and even killing to satisfy her ambitions. I lied to my mother about my source of income, claiming to work at a company while secretly amassing wealth through crime. At 20, I completed my first drug peddling operation and bought my first car, further deceiving my mother with a fake university certificate. I married my beautiful, innocent wife, Chizobam, at 25. She was a virgin, chosen as directed by the godfather of Harzanu, whom I joined at the age of 22. After sleeping 3 days in the forest like a madman, my wealth grew, but it came at a steep price. I met Chizobam in church when she was barely 17 years and part of the choir. Despite her family's poverty, they were devoted Christians who hoped her marriage would secure a better future for their other children and complete Chizobam's education. I promised to fulfill these hopes, but I never did. Instead, I insisted that she must give birth before we could have a church wedding, a condition I knew would likely never be met. Chizobam moved in with me and became pregnant just a month later, which thrilled her parents and her as they anticipated a church wedding soon. However, as per the demands of the Hazanu kingdom, the 5th month of her pregnancy required a gruesome sacrifice. The child's blood had to be spilled in our living room. To ensure the ritual wasn't compromised, I confined Chizobam to our home from her 3rd month of pregnancy. Chizobam opened a shopping mall, which I would destroy every 2 years through various disasters like fire outbreaks or ceiling collapses, as instructed by Harzanu. This was to ensure her hard work wasn't part of the business and she could only profit in the 1st year. Additionally, she wasn't allowed to send large sums of money or gifts to her parents, and I had to share gifts with the poor. Our home became notorious among friends and relatives who avoided staying over due to hearing baby cries at night in our 10 years of marriage. Chizobam suffered numerous miscarriages, so many that I lost count. My mother labeled her a witch and pressured me to divorce her, but I refused. My mother brought many women to our home, none of whom stayed for more than a week, and I exploited them for my own benefit. After each miscarriage, I took Chizobam on trips to any country she desired and showered her with gifts, pretending to care about her well-being, though my true joy lay in my wealth and power. Despite her misery, Chizobam considered leaving, but her devoted Christian family discouraged her, even though they had distanced themselves from her. My troubles escalated in our 5th year of marriage. As usual, I bought her luxury gifts, but it was also the 2nd year since reopening her mall, so I needed to destroy it again. I hired some boys to rob and burn down the mall, but they went further than I had anticipated. The boys I hired to rob and burn down Chizobam's mall did more than I had anticipated. They not only destroyed the mall, but also caused havoc that extended beyond my intentions. The destruction was so extensive that it drew unwanted attention, and it became impossible to cover up what happened. The aftermath of the incident marks the beginning of my downfall. Some months later, my wife told me she was pregnant. I never knew that the pregnancy was already 3 months. At 5 months, my instincts kept telling me she was already 6 months. I struggled. Chizobam, already devastated by her losses and constant tragedies in her life, was further shattered by this event. The extent of the destruction and the chaos that followed pushed her to a breaking point. Despite her family's previous insistence on staying in the marriage, they could no longer ignore the toll it was taking on her. They urged her to leave me for her own safety and sanity. I went to renew my oath and received the greatest shock of my life when the godfather growled,
That child is not your blood. How can you be this careless? I warned you. No man should ever lay with your wife or get her pregnant. You have two options, or you and your mother will die.
The thought of my mother dying was unbearable. I couldn't let that happen. What must I do, my lord? I asked the godfather, desperate for a solution.
First, you must find the boy who impregnated your wife. If he takes advantage of her again, she will die with the child. That child must not be born, he commanded.
But where will I find the boy? I thought, panicked. I had sent 5 boys to rob and burn down the mall, and I usually killed them or made them mad after they spent what they stole from me.
Second option,
I pleaded, seeking an alternative.
Kill your pregnant wife in your living room, in front of your mother, and take advantage of your mother after sprinkling your wife's blood on her body,
he instructed coldly.
Must it be my mother?
I asked, horrified by the suggestion.
Yes, he replied,
leaving no room for renegotiation.
Don't question Hazenu, the godfather. Rod. Yes, it must be your mother, because she persuaded you to become who you are today,
he commanded. In anger and deep thought, I left Hazanu Kingdom without taking a bow, determined to find a solution. The community, already suspicious due to the strange occurrences at our home and the repeated destruction of the mall, began to scrutinize my actions more closely. Rumors spread quickly, and soon the authorities got involved. Investigations were launched into the series of events surrounding the fires and other disasters that plagued Chizoban's business and her pregnancy. Desperately, I set off to look for the boys, hoping to find at least one still alive. Upon arriving in the area, I inquired about the boys' whereabouts. I was told that 3 of them had died in an accident. One had traveled out of the country with no news from anyone, and the last one, an only child, who had gone mad after losing his mother and friends, now slept in the accidented car only at night and left early in the morning. To my shock, the accidental car turned out to be my wife's. For the first time in my life, I felt genuine regret for my actions. But my regrets didn't matter now. I needed to save my life. Determined, I decided to wait in the car without the knowledge of the neighborhood, hoping to confront the mad boy. I waited patiently for 1 week, each night filled with anxiety and fear, hoping the boy would show up. Hoping the mad boy would come to spend the night in the car, as they said, I grew anxious when he didn't appear. Time was running out, and after 2 weeks of waiting, I realized I had only about 2 weeks left before the child would be born. Desperation set in, and I considered the second option. I decided to pick my mother first, fabricating a story that my wife was about to give birth and needed assistance with cooking and household chores. Upon reaching the house, we found my wife's absent. Rushing to the bedroom, I discovered she had packed some of her belongings. Besides the bed, there was a note. Darling, I traveled to my parents' house, as we discussed, so that they can help me in taking care of the twins.
Twins! I exclaimed. I am finished.
I remembered her talking to me after she came back from her 3 month visit to her parents' house, but I was bewildered. Why While I was still in thoughts, Ego Dimma came into the room questioning. I heard you screaming twins. Is your wife expecting twins? Is she in the hospital? Where is she? I nodded in affirmation, and she started shouting and dancing and cursing. God knows who. My enemies have been put to shame. So I am a grandmother to Ejima. She was still jubilating when I rushed out of the house without her knowledge and headed to my wife's parents' place. As I arrived at my in-laws' house, I met my father-in-law. My son, welcome, he greeted. Good evening, sir, I replied. You came just in time, my son. My daughter. He was still talking when my wife came out with the babies. Darling, I wish it were the three babies that survived. But thank God I lost only one. Immediately I heard her voice, I turned towards her direction and saw her with the babies. I slumped and went into coma. I woke up in the hospital after 7 months. As I was told, I had become deaf and dumb. I wished the ground would swallow me because I kept seeing the children as my wife often stayed with me in the hospital. I was later discharged after 6 extra months with no development or healing. My siblings and mother never visited me. I was at the mercy of my in-laws who took me from one church to another, but nothing was resolved. All this while, I had not set my eyes on my mother and siblings. Only my step siblings came most times to see me. After about 3 years of my disaster, my parents in law and my wife took me to the international airport. Am I traveling? Where is my luggage? I wondered. I was still in thoughts when my step eldest brother and my immediate younger brother joined us for the first time after 3 years. My brothers came to see me. What is happening? I tried to speak, but no words came out. Suddenly, a woman passed by. My brothers dragged me while my parents in law blocked the woman. To my astonishment, it was my mother, but I could barely recognize her. What is she doing here? Is she traveling? And why is she wearing my joggers and jewelry? I wondered aloud. As soon as she saw me, my mother went into frenzy, and I found myself suddenly alert. She confessed to being responsible for my father's death and other heinous acts in my life. She admitted to stealing my properties and planning to leave the country when fate caught up with her. 2 months later, she passed away. After this tremendous encounter, I resolved to turn my life around and pursue a path of godliness and honesty. My wife went on to have more children, and our family found peace again. The people of Amanze village continued to tell the young stars the story about me and my family. Thank you once again for enjoying this beautiful story. Do do share your comments